I want to talk briefly about the Steyr Aug Nato version, running a standard 5.56 AR mag on the back versus their proprietary mag. Just kind of give you the quick little basics, the difference between the Nato version and the standard Aug, the pros and cons of each, and then I'll kind of break down some of the upgrades I have on this. Not a whole lot of them, but just a couple of upgrades I think that make the gun a little better. And then maybe even if I have time, do a breakdown of the actual weapon and kind of show you how it comes apart. It's really simple to do. Okay, so first things first, what's different about the 5.56 NATO version, and that's speaking to the magazines, not the caliber, and the standard AUG? Well, as I've already mentioned, this is a standard AR-15 magazine, or AR-15 M16 style magazine. So I already have a trillion of these magazines around. Why would I want to add an additional magazine? Okay, so that was the whole reason why I went with the NATO version. I think it's like $100 more than the standard AUG, but you do give up a little bit. On a standard AUG, this is a bolt release. When you fire the last round, it locks to the rear, and that's a bolt release. On this weapon, it is a redundant magazine release. I do like this mag release better than the standard AUG mag release. That's this one, which it still has. This is just way more comfortable to me. I'm already used to grabbing there anyway. I don't have to think to twist my whole thumb over here to grab that. Not that that's a major deal. But so there is no bolt lock open on the NATO version, so you do give up that a little bit. Okay, wasn't worth it to me to have the bolt lock open, to be able to have the magazines, because I have so many of them anyway, like I said. So for me and my purposes, it meant more to me to have a little bit more redundancy in what I use for my magazines than to have the bolt lock open. So what do I have done to this? Oh, something else that you need to make a note of on the NATO version. The NATO version is only right side eject. Now I think you can get kits that set the whole thing up. I could be wrong, but it comes right side only, where the standard AUG, you can take the stock off. There's an ejection port on both sides of the plug, and you can set the bolt up to right side or left side eject, because the AUG is not a ambidextrous friendly weapon. So on a standard AR, I'm going to have to hold this kind of funny, on a standard AR, you know, I can flip to the left side, no big deal. The problem with this, if I flip to the left side on this AUG, it's throwing brass right in my face, okay? And it does come at a rearward angle. Now you can kind of try to dodge it by getting behind the stock, putting this in your chest or out of the pocket a little bit to the inside, and try to have it zip by you. But the reality is, if I ever needed to pry off a door going to the right, or I needed to pry off a window to the right, one or two things are going to happen. I'm either going to do it off, you know, right-handed and arc my hips past and my back past, or I'm just not going to care if the brass hits me in the face. Okay, it's going to hit you in the mouth. If it hits you, it's not going to hit you in the eye. So if I have to take a couple of cases of brass to the face to neutralize a threat inside of a room or a window, that's a small price to pay. So can you run this left-handed? Sure you can, if you needed to. It's just you're not going to permanently set this up left-handed without buying a kit and doing all that. Okay, and I'm not even positive you can even buy a kit for the NATO version. I think you can, but don't quote me on it. So those are the things. It's give and take. You know, you're gaining some redundancy with your magazines to go with the NATO version, but you're paying a little bit more for it. You're losing your bolt lock to the rear on the last round, and you're losing being able to swap it over, which really only matters to you if you are left-handed in terms of how you shoot a rifle. So let's talk about some mods just quickly. Aesthetically, all I've done is I just did a little bit of a netted paint job with some Krylon on this. I have swapped this out, the gear heads mount. This is a takedown button to remove the stock when you're breaking the weapon down. This one is set up. It's a metal piece. It's meant to be load bearing now, and I can put this QD swing swivel in there, or sling swivel in there. I did have to mill a little bit of the plastic away to give this mount, sling mount clearance on this. I think it's an MS4. But once it's on there, and it stays really well. So now if I need to transition to my sidearm or whatever, I can go single point. Not a big, huge fan of single point slings for like a full day use, but a quick little patrol or whatever, I think they're good to go. Running inside, you know, respond to active shooter, home defense, that kind of thing. Single point slings do and can work. What else do I have done to it? I swapped out, same brand, gearheads, I think that's what it's called. The stock charging handle for the AUG is polymer and is angled up like this, so you just smash your fingers constantly into the mount if you have a scope mount. If you don't have a mounted optic, you're smashing them into that pick rail. So what they've done is made an aluminum version, which is going to be more substantial. The way it catches up here, whatever this is catching on steel. So even though aluminum is still softer than steel, it's going to last a whole lot longer than polymer. And this is just a way better angle to grab down low and snake this up in there in that catch versus slamming your hand on the rail of your optic mount. And then you can just flick it down the chamber around if that's what you're doing. You don't have to angle it up if you're just clearing it or doing a press check or whatever. You know, press checking to see if you have something on the bolt face. Obviously the advantage of a bullpup is that it's so short. This being a full-length weapon, it's not a short-barreled rifle. It does come with a sling mount up here. It seems kind of ridiculous. I don't know what purpose that could possibly serve. It kind of gets in the way. You can't even really charge the weapon. I mean, you can angle it down. It's just awkward. But I guess I really wanted to run this 2-point. I could run this sling mount back here, and then run this up here. But the weapon's so short anyway. I mean, yeah, that's higher up, probably better than where I'd really want it if I was transitioning to a handgun or running or whatever. But, you know, is it enough to be worried about where I'm having to dig for this? Now, I'll tell you this, it's almost impossible to run a sling there with the stock charging handle. But I am able to keep my hand down and charge that pretty well with the sling. So this aftermarket charging handle makes it a whole lot easier to run a sling on that position. Running just standard aim point Comp M L3 4 MOA. So it is the night vision compatible 4 MOA old school aim point that I run on everything, every patrol rifle I have that I really love. On a little command arms flashlight mount with a Mako 300 aluminum flashlight. I like this mount on this AUG because I can pull it down. If I was running night ops, if I knew it was really likely that I was going to use my flashlight, I could run this down here and access it a whole lot easier from this downward position on this stock Picatinny rail here on the side. But if I wasn't expecting to, I'd get it up out of the way where it's kind of not as much sticking off of it. I can still get to it if I need to, both with my thumb or trigger finger. But you know, just having a little options there to move stuff around. Obviously, it's the AUG. This is stock. This forward grip can move. I don't know if I would really run it this way, but it makes it easier to put under a truck seat or something like that. So I guess that's pretty much it in terms of mods and what have you. What I will do is I will show you how to break down the rifle really quickly. It's a simple process, and then give you kind of my overall view of how I see this fitting into my world. One other thing I did modify is the side of the safety sticks out really far when it's on safe and it digs into your finger. So I just with the Dremel tool rounded that off so that it's not digging my finger. Now it's really comfortable, even though it's sticking out really far. Finger straight on the trigger, I can just go down to fire with the top of my finger. So I'll pause the video and I'll reset in a different angle so you can kind of see the weapon getting broken down. Alright, so breaking the weapon down, like I said, pretty simple process. Go ahead and get the sling out of the way where that's not encumbering our movements here. Magazine's already removed. Clearing the weapon. It is clear. Okay, so step one, I'm going to lock the bolt to the rear. I'm going to reach up and press this little button in. There's a little, I say down, it's really a downward thing. I'm pressing that button in and downward. Well, pull the barrel right off. Ease the bolt forward. I can pop this piece all the way through. Now it's not going to come all the way out, but it's going to move till it stops. Then I'm able to just pull this off these rails, the whole sort of upper receiver and all that comes out. And if I want to pull the rest of the bolt and rail out, I can do that. That's pretty much as far as you'll really ever need to break it down. If you want to, you can push this in on the back, pull this pin out the side. It's also a sling mount if you wanted to use it as a sling mount. I'm not even sure if this is on camera. Pull that out, open this up, and then the trigger mechanism can come out. Okay, so say the trigger mechanism, it's fire control group. The trigger's still up here, obviously, but the fire control group fits in the back here. And that's, I mean, I would even consider that further than field strip. There's really no reason to take this out. It's interesting to me that this is almost all polymer except for a couple of pieces in the springs, obviously. All polymer fire control group. But this is it, pretty much broken down. You know, you oil it where common sense would tell you to oil it, where metal touches metal, on these rails, where the barrel lugs are, and that locking point there. Maybe a couple of drops where these rails will slide through, but you probably don't need to do that because you've got it on the rails. The bolt face down in here, inside behind the bolt carrier. Same place you'd oil any weapon. And you know, reassembly is pretty much as straightforward as disassembly is. Put this back on here. In fact, in my opinion, putting the end cap of the stock on is the most difficult part of the whole process. Only because you have to press the center of this stock down before you slide this through. And you gotta make sure it's not flush. It doesn't need to be flush. It needs to be sticking out from the stock. About a 1/4 inch that's in there. Just slide this. Oh, how about we put the bolt in there first? Slide this rearward. Make sure this little takedown pin's out of the way. And then this is under spring tension, so when you get this on here, you can use the weight of that, push that all the way in. Slide that back towards you. That's all locked into place. Barrel can go on there. Pull the bolt out of the way, and it's together. It's not the best trigger in the world, but it's not nearly as bad as people make it out to be. If you're a military type and you're used to a GI trigger, it's a little mushy, it's a little vague, but I have absolutely no doubts it'll get the job done in a gunfight. Now, overall impressions of the weapon. It was one of my bucket list guns. For no other reason than I just think it's a really cool gun. I think it's an interesting design. I love bullpups, and to me this is the quintessential bullpup. I know a lot of people's into the Tavor and all that. Really all the Tavor is, or Tavor, or however you want to pronounce it, is a knockoff, really, a fancier looking knockoff of this gun. When I say knockoff, I don't mean that with a negative connotation. It's a great gun. It's just an Israeli version of this with more pick rails, and it looks a little cooler. The major hang-up with this bullpup is the way it ejects. If it was an eject out the bottom or out the front, like some of the FS or the FN does, that'd be great. But it doesn't, and you know, that's fine for me. I understand how important, trust me, I understand how important it is to be able to pile off a window to the right if you're right-handed, or pile off a door, enter, you know, as the point man or whichever man you are in a stack to the right of a door, and being able to transition to the left hand is great and wonderful. This does not do that well, but it is still the quintessential bullpup to me, and I've always wanted one, so that's why I got it. It needed some major adjustment here with this charging handle. It's worlds better having this aluminum downward facing charging handle and having an easier way to throw a quick sling, you know, single point sling on there. Those two mods went a long way for me and really making this gun more functional. I understand its limitations, but for what it is, it's really good. That length of pull without having to worry about SBRs or any of that other stuff is great. It's a comfortable gun to shoot. It surprised me on how accurate it was to shoot. I haven't really stretched it out a long way, but even at 25 yards, which this is a CQB weapon to me, a home defense weapon to me, it's sub 1 inch, sub 3/4 inch, probably sub ½ inch group actually. I was very impressed with how accurate it was, and that's, I mean, not on a bench. That's just leaning the forward grip on a shooting rest in front of a pistol range and putting a group out there. So really cool gun. I love the gun. I've always liked this gun. I'm glad to finally have one, and I'm so glad that they were able to have the foresight to do this, where I'm not playing, you know, proprietary mag games with a standard AUG. So I hope you got something out of this. I know it's not this typical kind of review I would do, or video I would do, but I thought it was an interesting gun, and so if I thought it's interesting, maybe somebody else thinks it's interesting. If you got any questions, obviously at some point, I know the first thing somebody's going to say is, well, shoot it on a video. So I'm at work right now on lunch break, so it'd be pretty loud upstairs. I'm in an indoor range shooting 5.56. So I will do that eventually, and hopefully I'll actually get out and run and gun with it, and run a carbine course or something with it, and give you something a little more interesting to look at if I'm running the gun. So any questions, as always, comment. Anything you want to see in particular with this or any other gun that I may have access to, or anything you want to see me train specifically on, I'm more than willing to take those suggestions.